working on the Toadstool table, and it's come a long ways. So it has been completely encased in epoxy, and as you can see, I've done the sanding and whatnot. So for the most part, it's ready for final spray. What I need to do is come up with a way to attach the base. So here's the base. Currently, this is recessed inside poured epoxy. What I'm thinking about doing is carefully notching out around all of this to the right depth. Then I will set this whole stump, really, in my notches. Maybe half an inch deep, at which point I will pour epoxy on all of it. So that's my working theory. I'm not entirely sure how to do it yet. I believe I'll do it at the big radial arm drill press, basically the same way that I flattened the tabletops. And I'll draw my line out, and I'll use a Forstner bit to go ahead and cut it. But at the moment, it's still a theory, and I'm kind of still thinking. But you'll know what I did, well, basically now. Okay, I have decided against using the big drill press. Instead, I'm going to use that router I just rebuilt. So you can see I've gone ahead and sketched out the actual footprint. I got my router all set. I'm taking a little deeper path than you normally would, simply because I'm kind of hoping I'll only have to do it once, giving me nice clean lines. We'll see. Cross our fingers. I'm going to start in the middle, sort of a spiral out loop, in an attempt to keep the router basically on as much flat wood as possible at all times. Got your ears on? Okay. Now that I've cleaned the center, I can work around the outside edge. If I work around the outside edge first, when I go to do the center, there'll be nothing to support the plate of the router. It's also why I really, really want to do this in one shot. Left a very clean cut. Now, as I was afraid, in the center there is a little wobbling, as you can see, but you know what, it just won't matter. Not really. As long as all of the points where my branches hit, or roots I guess would be more accurate, are the same, and they all are. So, yeah, once again, I remain exceptionally happy with this. That was a lot of work, plowed right through it. Man, I'm glad I rebuilt this router. Anyways, all we need to do now is test fit the base. Hit or miss time. You ready for this, buddy? Buddy, yeah, you're my buddy. Here we go. You gotta find all those spots that it doesn't fit. Ooh, and there's a lot of them. Yup. Now we gotta mark them. Now we gotta mark them. Hmm? Hey. You gotta keep your headphones on, okay? Did you pull the things out of your earphones again? Hmm? Don't you giggle at me. Don't you giggle at me. And there it is, all fit up. What's nice about the recess is even these roots here, which weren't quite touching previously, will still dip into the epoxy. And it's got a funny wobble it didn't have before. And I don't know what's changed, because in theory it's all still flat down in there. Anyways, certainly the epoxy will hold it into place, and I'll just add some weight up here to tip it down flat, and that should be acceptable. It's a lot of epoxy, however. A lot of epoxy. There'll be 20 bucks in epoxy just holding this down. So what I might do is either cut blocks of wood to set in there, or maybe some blue glass to set in there, so that it eats up some of that volume, so I'm not having to take care of all of that with my epoxy. What do you think? E-I-E-I-E-I-O. So, now that I've got my epoxy very thoroughly mixed, I'm just going to attempt, and this should be exciting, to pour it without making a massive mess in a few of these various little areas. Letting the epoxy wick down in and around as it sees fit, trying not to get a bunch of it on top of the table base. Yeah, twinkle, twinkle, little star. So I'll go down and around these various roots. Obviously it wicks out underneath, which is completely fine for me. And I'll just try to spread the epoxy around. Now what are you building? This is pour. I've leveled it. My table saw isn't actually level, so I've actually leveled this so that I get as even a pool as possible. Now this stuff, the Juniper, I'm sure will soak up a tremendous amount of epoxy, which is fine, except it obviously it'll drop the levels. So this will require a second pour. What I'm hoping is it doesn't drop the levels so far that some of these roots that are up in the air lose contact, because the epoxy will never stick as hard the second time. Epoxy to wood, powerful. Epoxy to epoxy, not so much. So I'm hoping we don't lose contact. I'll come back out and check it just before bed tonight, and if it looks like things are going to go south, I can add some more then, and the two epoxy should still mix. Other than that, it's just a waiting game. No matter what, whether it keeps or loses contact, this will still stick, though I will give it a second pour tomorrow, because I want these things encapsulated as best I can. I don't want this wobbling loose. And in order to stop the wobble, I've got a couple of pounds of steel there, cantilevered over the side, bringing the whole thing in line. Once the epoxy sets, obviously it can't wobble from that point on. You ready to go to bed?
No.
No? You want to go inside?
Outside.
Outside? Do you want to punch in the nose?
Okay.
Okay. Who's got a dirty face? Oh, that's you. Pretty cool, huh? The epoxy's had 24 hours to set up. Everything seems nice and sturdy. We're about to set her on her base for real for the first time. What do you think about that?
Bye.
Okay. Well, I guess that's that.
Bye-bye.
There you go. That's not too bad. It's too tall to comfortably sit on. It's sort of a sofa end table plant stand kind of thing. If I'm honest, I think the whole thing is too tall. Yeah, it happens when you're sort of freehanding this sort of stuff. Anyways, I haven't been able to find a frog yet, so there's nothing in the hole there, and I haven't installed my swamp plants in there, so this still needs to be filled with epoxy. I'm torn because I really want to spray the whole thing in poly to cover up any exposed wood and really give it a chance to harden up. But I don't want to contaminate that hole with poly. So, for the moment, I think it'll just sit here. I mean, I designed it to be tall. I knew that when I put it together. It's just I don't like it necessarily as much tall. I kind of wish it was shorter.